We are live now.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Eric Malice, your host this morning or evening, depending on where you're dialing in from, for our second edition of the CorpGini online videocast. So for those of you who are just joining us today for the first time, this is our second day of a 6-day series where a number of us who've been involved in corporates and startups from various backgrounds have gotten together in an attempt to provide some information and a dialogue exchange to corporates around the world, particularly focused in India, with different perspectives on how to navigate this coronavirus situation we all find ourselves in. So my name is Eric Malice, your host. I am the co-founder of a computer vision and AI startup that was originally formed in Bangalore called Linkcode Labs. I am the co-founder and partner of a legal and strategy consulting firm based in the Bay Area called Talus Partners. And I've been a professor and advised startups for a number of years. And I'm here tonight to help navigate the conversation and the interesting, thoughtful discussion that we're about to have regarding this chapter of how the coronavirus epidemic is affecting our lives as corporates. And so CorpGini, I'd like to introduce as the organization that's hosting this event. CorpGini is actually a platform for corporates to discover and learn disruptive technology solutions and engage with startups to adopt innovative ideas. So there's a platform online that will connect corporates to startups so that they can engage in these sort of conversations and direct solutions. And we have alongside that this series of panel discussions and startup presentations provided by CorpGini, along with Pantomath and Z Nation Labs, who've come together to put this together. So between April 6th and 11th, 11 a.m. IST, there will be a series of events concluding with, starting off with one panel discussion. And then second will be a number of startup presentations to advise on different solutions corporates can adopt today. We want to thank our partners, BSE, the Bombay Stock Exchange, UC Berkeley Extension here in California, British Deputy High Commission in UK, Toronto Business Development Center in Canada, and Business Standard in India, amongst others. It's now my distinguished pleasure to introduce Mahavir, co-founder of CorpGini, who's going to introduce himself and then kick off the panel discussion.
Thanks, Eric, for setting the context very nicely yet again. Hello all and warm welcome to all the expert panel members and learned participants. I'm Mahavir Lunawat, founder of mid-market investment banking, financial services, and corporate advisory group Pantomath, and co-founder CorpGini Innovation. As you would know, CorpGini is a platform for corporates to consistently discover and learn disruptive tech solutions and engage with startups to adopt innovative solutions. Well, we had a very successful first round yesterday. This is a week-long initiative, as Eric has briefed, to fight COVID-19 in a very constructive manner to strengthen industry where thousands of corporates, startups, investors, and institutions have been participating globally. Friends, as a group, we have personally interacted with over 5,000 business houses, and that enables us to understand them and appreciate their needs at grassroots level. We have particularly in last couple of weeks interacted with several industry houses spanning across MSMEs, mid-market, large sectors, and observed the challenges that each of them face are galore. Somewhere excess inventories, somewhere they are running out of materials, some have lapsing orders, some are faced with supply chain issues, while of course, finance is on top of everyone's mind. Coupled with internal challenges, industry grapples with macros like uncertainties looming around lockdown, normalcy post-lockdown, global trade channels functionality, and changing patterns and priorities. In this backdrop, friends, today we are taking up an extremely essential topic, and that's post-crisis scenario and planning for the same. You all will agree that the theme is relevant to one and all in today's context. And to deliberate upon this most pertinent question, we have with us a very, very heavy duty panel today. And before we take this discussion forward, it will be my pleasure to invite all the panel members to give a quick one-line introduction about themselves, though they don't need any introduction, but nevertheless, I'm sure this particular discussion is being relayed globally. So I will quickly request all the panel members to unmute themselves and a quick line of introduction to set the context.
Can I start?
Yeah, please.
I'm Sanjeev Pendarkar, Director in Vico Laboratories. We are exporting our products to more than 45 countries, and we have completed 70 years right from inception, and our foreigners use our product and well accepted globally, and we have winner of cult brand and so many other awards. We manufacture Ayurvedic and herbal products.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Nice to have you. Mr. Timlo?
Good morning to all. My name is Amber Timlo. I'm the Managing Director of Fermental Resources. We have interests in mineral resource development, steel, hydro energy, trading and shipping, and hospitality in India and abroad.
Hi, this is Dr. Sonde. Good morning or good evening, wherever you are. I'm the Chief Technology Officer and a member on the Executive Council Board at Thermax. We are a company involved in light engineering, heavy engineering, manufacturing, capital goods, and this is a segment which is going through a lot of challenges. And in the later on, I will explain to you what is that we are planning come April 14th or whenever it opens up, what is that planning that we are doing it during my turn. Thank you and God bless you all.
Hi, I'm Jyotsna Sharma. I'm the CFO and head of IT at Bridgestone India. Bridgestone is one of the world's largest tire manufacturer in the world. Nice to talk to you all.
Hi, I'm Mukund Vasudevan. I'm the Managing Director of Ecolab India. Ecolab is a Fortune 200 US-based company in the area of, we make various kinds of solutions for water treatment for industries, hygiene and sanitation related solutions for, again, food and beverage manufacturing, pharmaceutical manufacturing. And we also have solutions in oil and gas production and refining. So again, hygiene, water, very relevant during these times.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Harshal? Harshal, you are there? So we have with us Harshal Kamdar, who's Chief Financial Officer of Sequoia India and Asia. I'm sure he'll be able to connect shortly. So with this, friends, I'm going to start today's discussion. But before we go into the actual discussion, let me have a quick rapid fire kind of a round and build it up the conversation thereon. So my first question to all the panel members is, you have to just choose, hold on to your detailed views, we'll definitely come to that, but please choose between the two words. The post-crisis scenario is going to be a threat or opportunity for businesses at large. Whether post-crisis scenario is a threat or opportunity for businesses at large.
According to me, it's an opportunity.
Okay.
I have to work.
Yeah.
Explain only one word. No?
Yeah, we'll take that as your view. So
it's an opportunity.
Okay.
Yes, it's an opportunity.
Okay.
It's going to be a threat, I think, in the immediate maybe 4 or 6 quarters.
Okay.
Yeah, you asked one word, but I'm going to say it is a threat, but every threat is an opportunity.
Okay. So I think majority of us do feel that it's an opportunity. Of course, there are views that it could be a potential threat as well. Well, let's take this forward. And can I ask all of you to describe your answer in one word? For example, if it's opportunity, what that means to you in one word, or if it's a threat, what you would define or describe that in one word?
Actually, it is a catastrophe. We have to find out opportunity in whatever calamity has happened.
Okay, so in one word, sir.
One word, it's a catastrophe. Sudden unexpected event.
Catastrophe, okay.
Sorry, Mahavi, you want us to do the one word describes the word opportunity, right?
Yes, please. In this context of COVID-19.
Ability to evolve over time.
Ability.
But that's the best.
Okay.
I would say
Yeah, Jyotsna, yeah.
I would say we could move from globalization to localization. That's an opportunity.
So localization is one word.
Profits are going to take a beating. We have been always the darling of the market.
One word, please. Dr. Sonde, only one word.
Profits are going to be under threat.
Okay.
Right.
Huge.
I'm going to say digital.
Digital. Very nice. Harshal, you are there? Okay. So let's now build it on in one sentence. So let's say it's bottom line, it's digital, it's localization. How do you describe this situation in one sentence? What it means to you, or how would you react to, let's say, localization or digital or all those you have defined or described in one word? In one sentence, how would you describe?
In one sentence, if I were to describe, it is businesses should evolve or develop gradually, proactively as a result of these natural calamities.
Okay.
Innovation and creativity. Just raise your intellect level to much higher level and work in a network manner. Thank you.
So according to you, threat is going to be addressed or must be addressed with innovation and technology.
Absolutely.
Sure.
I think it's an opportunity for businesses to accrue goodwill, because in requisite years to come, that goodwill will be able to yield far better results.
Sure. Appreciate.
I would say it's an opportunity for businesses to be humane and responsible at the same time.
So you said localization. So how do we connect opportunity and localization in one sentence?
So basically, when we say about localization, it's you could really stop your imports and you could develop as much within the country. You can use the same services which you're exporting today to be provided from within the country. And that would be a huge opportunity to be self-sufficient, because the market is in the country and we should be taking opportunity out from that situation.
Sure. Mukund?
Mukund, I think you're on mute. You may need to unmute yourself, sir.
Sorry. Yeah. So I said digital because I think this is going to be a game changer in terms of the way we provide services to our customers. I think a lot more can be done remotely there. It's also going to change the way people work. I think there's going to be a lot more acceptance of remote working, virtual work offices. So I think that's the reason I'm saying digital. There's also other areas like data becoming much more important now.
Sure. Sure.
And Mahavir, let me just jump in to briefly remind our audience. So we're just getting warmed up with the panel and we're about to get into more specific questions. If there's any questions that any of you have, we're structuring this that we have some predetermined questions for the panel, and then you can actually post them live. And we have a team standing by reviewing the questions and filtering them in categories. And then I'll be able to ask a few of your audience questions to the distinguished panel. So please feel free to share whatever is on your hearts and minds in the Q&A. Please continue, Mahavir.
Thanks, Eric, for being the bridge between the participants at large and panel members. I'm sure we'll have very insightful and very interactive discussion. So that, I think, takes me to our detailed discussion, and I'm going to ask with a very specific question. Harshal, you are there?
Hey guys, I'm back. Some tech hitch, but yeah, I'm good to be back.
Good.
Thank you. I was listening in. Thank you.
Yeah, we are just opening with our first question, detailed question, and which is very simple in appearance, but I'm sure it will have a lot of far-reaching implications in today's context. And I'm sure all of us will agree that change will be the only constant going forward. So the question is, how does one plan for this change in the business context? It could be in consumer behavior, it could be business dynamics, it could be business processes, it could be product preferences, or it could be sheer spending priorities post the crisis. So I think this is very relevant for businesses at large. And let us open our discussion with this question of how does one plan for the change which is inevitable?
Right, Mr. Mahavir, it's a very relevant question. it includes consumer behavior. It will change digital activities. Someone said it's absolutely a right word. Digital activity will increase and people will not gather together and like to order digitally or market digitally or do work digitally wherever it's possible.
Okay.
So this is we can plan for a change.
Okay. So basically what you are saying is that going digital will be the only way to kind of face the change and
Instead of
sure.
because consumer gathering, people will be fearful. So they will order online. They don't have to go to malls and it will be a digital ordering marketing work. People would like to prefer to work from home.
Sure, sure.
According to me.
I think Mukund, you said in our opening remarks that this opportunity is all about digital, and I think Mr. Pendarkar's view is kind of endorsing that view. So would you like to elaborate on this question and share your views in terms of how do we plan for this change in more specific manner, the way you look at it?
So I think digital is going to be one of the key drivers, but if I just kind of break it down into chunks, I think the first thing is, in order to plan, you have to plan using some scenarios. It's very unpredictable the rest of the year and possibly even beyond. There could be various scenarios, so plan for various scenarios. And as leaders or owners or founders, one of the things which I would say is very important is, while you're keeping the hope alive and showing the right hope alive with the entire team, you have to plan for the worst scenario and react accordingly or make plans accordingly. And those plans should be in the concept in short term and in the long term. In the short term, it might be things like, how do you handle your supply chain? How do you handle your cash flow? How do you, like Dr. Ramakrishna said, how do you make sure your profits are appropriate even at these times? I think the long term is where things like digital, things like someone else in the, I think Amber mentioned adaptability, things like becoming more adaptable, looking at which customer segments, for example, to focus on. For example, we do a lot of different customer segments in Ecolab, but we're realizing that maybe food and beverage, pharmaceutical is an area we should double down on at these times, or power plants. Those are essential commodities. Those are essential industries which will continue to run. So I think adaptability in different segments, in different solutions, which includes digital, will be key in the long term. So short term, profits, cash flow, supply chain issues have to be addressed. Longer term, which I'm saying longer term, but that has to be done. The planning for that has to be done in the next 2 months probably. Is digital, new customer segments to go after. But all this has to be done while keeping hope alive for the organization, and yet as leaders planning for the worst case scenario.
Sure.
Yeah, so to add to what Mukund said, right? I mean, in summary, hope is not a strategy. So, I mean, guys plan and plan well. Okay. Second, all business assumptions will be questioned. Something that you take for granted, saying I'll go and fly down to Bangalore and meet my client, will be questioned. And third, and the most important thing, be kind. Be conscious that this is the largest, challenge that humanity has faced in, say, the last 100 years. And therefore, while this might be the time to take certain harsh decisions, but I mean, just in terms of examples, and this has been repeated often, is rather than laying off, the bottom 20% of the employees, take 20% pay cut for the top 5 or whatever, and it'll all be sane, right? Also, because you're questioning all basic business assumptions, this is a right time to cut the fat, and not the muscle. Like I said, on useless business travel, okay, things that can be done over on Zoom or video call, basic things will be questioned. Also, in terms of all good customers that you would want to retain for the long term, will come back to you for discounts, for cash deferments, etc. If you want them to be your customers for the next 5 years, do that. If you don't, then tell them thank you. Okay. So, I mean, treat your employees like your customers and customers like your employees, in other words, if I were to rephrase. Yeah.
Sure. Thanks, Arshil, for bringing your views. I think very, very important in today's context. Mr. Timlo, you would like to share your views in terms of how do we
Sure.
Well,
I won't go into specific suggestions as much as I'll hover around some macro concepts that one has looked at as to what next is. If you look at if I have to pinpoint one issue, and you see it a lot in the chatter that you see going on between states, I mean countries, trying to articulate what their plans are and sometimes as to who to be blamed. I think what the trends are going to be forward are going to be far more intangible. They're going to vary geographically, politically. And to choose one issue, I believe, is that the recommencement of trade has to be without national bias. And I think going forward, that's going to, as it is as a community, if you see all the people on this panel are from various parts of the country, various parts of the world at this point in time. And there is no restriction on the sharing of ideas. And therefore the sharing of ideas should be permitted eventually to be the sharing of trade going forward. And I do hope that that's going to be one of the chief agenda points for all the companies and governments going forward when the pandemic can come within reasonable control.
Sure.
Yeah. What I feel that, yeah, we agree that change is the only constant, but at the same time, we know that human memories are short-lived. There's every possibility that consumer behaviors will change for a while and a lot more will fall back onto their old habits. At the same time, most of the businesses will be as usual about profits and valuation, and spending priorities on product preferences. I don't know exactly whether they would change because it is all the matter of economics. So even in future, if a Chinese product is cheaper and it's not harmful for health, perhaps people would still go for it. So I don't know whether this situation would really change in totality habits. But what I feel here is there's a much more bigger responsibility on the government, the administration, the corporations to take this opportunity and reframe the laws constructively, focus much more on healthcare and education, and make sure that all the resources which go in for the next couple of years, whether from CSR or from otherwise, are directed or channelized towards the key focus areas of enforcement of law, getting our health care administration in place and so forth. So this change would be meaningful if we really make sure we implement it with the perspective to sustain in future.
Sure.
I have a view here which is a little different.
Please.
My own research and my own analysis shows that come April 14th or whenever the country is going to open up in a phased manner or whatever it is, I feel we are going to wake up to a very new, different world. I mean, I don't know to argue beyond this point, but I am convinced that I think this has given a huge wake-up call to everybody, and we are going to get into a very different world. That's my conviction, and I don't know to get into that. But as a company which is a brick and mortar company, Thermax is a brick and mortar company. We manufacture boilers, water treatment plant, projects, power plants, and everything. We are concerned about how do we shape up this whole manufacturing sector, because everything cannot be digital. You need to be on the shop floor. We need to be on the field. We need to be developing a lot of things. So we are examining how do we really now work and build our system step by step. Now, do we have a deep plan? Yes, we have. Is it now fixed? No, because you can't think of everything today, because this is a situation none of us have imagined. So it is going to evolve. We need to do a lot of planning as we enter into that situation. And today my concern, and I would like to confess with you, how to take care of the safety of my people. And that's something which we are actually looking at it, because I need to give confidence to my workers. We have got about 4,500 workers. Even if it's 10 workers or 100 workers, how do you take care of their safety? How do you ensure that that their health is taken care? And how do you still now focus on those sectors like the pharma sector, food sector, consumer sector, few of those sectors? How do you process them? How do you work them? How do you modify your product? How do you bring innovations? How do you bring new products to them? Is something which we thought we will do it in the short term. I'm not getting into the detail because I think there's a time limit. This is where I feel change is going to be happening. As you all said, that change is going to be constant. We are entering into a new world, and then we need to be planning with a huge amount of responsibility and our compassion to the fellow worker, which some of you have alluded to. Thank you.
I think Dr. Sonde, you have made a very pertinent point. And other day we were in discussion with even some of the industries which fall under essentials, which have been permitted by the state to continue with their operations. Their factories are supposed to be up and running, and they need to manufacture those essential items and reach out to consumers. But the problem is, one is labor. That somebody needs to find the physical labor, and those labor need to be present at the factory. And even assuming some of the places where, let's say, they have provided quarters or accommodation to laborers within the compound, the again problem comes supply chain logistics, that how do they reach out their products to, let's say, consumer at large or the market at large. So I think we are faced with interesting situations where digital, of course, is going to be the way, but as you rightly said, it has to be balanced with on-ground, activities as well. So I think COVID-19 pandemic has impacted the businesses at unprecedented magnitude, and we are going to witness paradigm shift the way businesses would be run. I think that's, if I have to sum up all the views of the panelists, and I'm sure change is going to be inevitable, and we need to plan the new scenario, post-crisis scenarios properly. And that leads me to the next question, which is very, very important. And we keep on hearing about this question because we need to prepare. And this is not merely a theoretical question, because if we have to look, or any businesses has to look at the recovery post-crisis, what's going to be the shape of recovery? Whether it will be L-shape, whether it will be U-shape, whether it will be V-shape recovery, perhaps no one certainly knows. But definitely we need to have our own views formed up so that we can plan appropriately for post-crisis scenarios. And in that context, if you were to advise, respectively, each of you, is there any method in analyzing the recovery trends, and what steps one should take in any one of those trends?
See, being optimistic, I'll say it will be a U-shaped recovery, and the suggested measures that business model, everyone should have flexible business model, that in case of facing such calamities, they should be able to sustain. Normally what happens, we follow 80-20 rule, means 20% of the products give 80% of the revenue. But this time we have to divide 80-20 by 80-20. That principle has to be adopted. So 4% efforts will give 64% results. If that is followed and business model is made flexible with the proper apportionment of funds for such calamities, then it will be a U-shaped recovery.
U-shape, okay.
Hey, Mahavir, I'll go next.
Sure, Harshal,
Yeah,
please.
I'll just be one line and then hand over to Mr. Sonde, Dr. Sonde. Is I wish it will be a heart-shaped recovery. I have no views on whether it will be UV or not, but I just hope it will be a heart shape and everything goes fine. So,
sure. But what steps one should take, Harshal? Because you have been interacting with a lot of investee companies, you have been part of a lot of transactions, in fact, wide varieties of companies in one organization. So what, according to you, key steps one should take regardless of, let's say, particular shape?
I will be honest, right? I mean, there is no right answer for this. Okay. And anything that I say is a shooting in the dark. Okay. It's horses for courses. There are edtech companies that are doing very well and they're already on recovery mode plus. There are companies who don't have monies to pay salaries, right? So it's really horses for courses. You should just look at your own, micro scenario. And to take a point from Amber, right? I really wish in my heart what he said is true, that trade is not impacted, but considering what we are seeing in the US, like, cutting down reliance on China, etc., it's going to be a very different world, like Dr. Sonde said. So we should be ready for the worst, and hope for the best.
Mr. Timlo, you would like to go next?
Well, yeah, I mean, in continuation of what I was saying earlier, is I do believe it to be U-shaped, but as stretched U as possible, as opposed to a perfect U, because I think that, again, continuing from what I said and what Harshal said, is because it's been bothering me in the course of time, is that the doubt is being easily dispelled that ultimately the state is showing itself to be in charge as opposed to the private sector or business. And to me, that has a large term ramification going forward, even though, like, especially now, I've been seeing cases in the UK and in India, it's the lack of investment in the healthcare sector by the government and from the private sector be permitted in a right environment to do so that has resulted in a catch-up game going on when a pandemic like this results. And the problem then happens is there's a blame game and there's a catch-up going on, which is counterproductive at best. But on a more specific thing as to where businesses should perceive as their mandate is, putting, the aspect of duty aside, it makes complete business sense to attempt to accrue as much goodwill as possible, because I believe that, and not very far away, that when, attempts of executive pay will come into concept, buyback would come into context, the question of the public trust litmus test will become a lot harsher, and always it will be towards, the pressure will be towards the value creation and the profit creation, which will be the, the recipient of most of this criticism. And so definitely it's a long game, but it requires, absolute fiscal and commercial discipline, but with an altruistic tinge. So that's the way I would articulate it at this stage.
Sure.
Yeah, just to add to what Amber said, I think you put it perfectly. It's focus on goodwill, focus on cash flow. I'd say both those would be very critical in the next few months, maybe full year itself. I think the concept of L-shaped, V-shaped, U-shaped curve is kind of irrelevant, right? At the end of the day, every business is going to be different. How they respond is going to be different. And I think to a certain extent, as I said in the beginning, you have to assume the worst and plan accordingly. If you do that, and you're agile, you're adaptable, you can come out of this for your own microcosm, you'll come out of this with a V curve, right? I think the macroeconomy is less relevant than is how you adapt and what you do in the short term and long term.
Sure.
The way I look at it is that this recovery would be different for different states. Like, looking at the current stature, there's no one answer for India or even globally. And the level of interdependencies we have on each other is going to really change your curve from time to time, depending on the expanse of this whole scenario. So there's no one answer to what shape of recovery would be for anyone, whether it's businesses, states, or country or nations. And to me, what we should really look at this point in time from a business perspective is from short term to long term, invest in relationships. Most important is build up your relationships with your entire supply chain end to end. Make sure you are focusing on new technologies to do business in new ways. It's certain we might need to be at locations to do productions, etc. And India will have to continue to do that. But within that, how do you secure such situations if they were to arise at any point in time, that you can work from any which place and yet let the businesses run? So I think there's a lot more thought processes which will go around looking at new technologies, new way of financing, new partnerships, and that is what we should nurture around in this period. So whatever time it takes, we will have to start looking forward and to get back to an upward curve.
But Jyotsna, as a let's say CFO, as head of finance and IT, of course, it's a very unique combination. But as a head of that, what would be your suggestion to, let's say, corporates like Thermex or corporates like Fomento or corporates like Ecolab, who are, let's say, I'm just taking names out of the panel here. What will be your professional suggestion, whether they should go aggressively to build capacity? So as I said, the question of, let's say, the shape of recovery is not merely theoretical, but it's just a kind of, benchmarking from a business point of view, that how aggressive or how conservative one should be when it comes to planning and preparing for, let's say, post-crisis scenario.
So if you look at India per se over the span of 15 to 18 months, I think India had already started investing huge in capacities across various segments because of Make in India, because of the positive approach that we had towards our GP and the nation. But over the last 6 to 8 months, we had seen that all the businesses were suffering on various counts. Could be in automobile industry, it was more of electric vehicles or BS4 norms which were coming in. And we have seen the same in real estates, which were not moving upward. So already we had seen the economy moving down. Now, on the face of it, do we really look at businesses might need to expand? I think they will have to evaluate with reference to their respective businesses. Perhaps they would have to change their way of doing things. Capacities are there in abundance in most of the sectors, according to what I would say. At least the automotive sector, why I relate to, there is a huge amount of capacity. But are we going to be, and they also do a lot of employment up there. So are we going to be able to sustain that? And to be able to sustain that, what is it that we'll be able to do differently is where the focus will have to be there. Also, as we have heard that most of the organizations are withdrawing their capexes. There's almost a full stop to capexes for, you can say, next two years at least now in the current scenario. And the capexes or the investments would yet happen in the relevant spaces. And that I foresee would be new technologies, new businesses, maybe diversified businesses also at the same time. Maybe mergers and acquisitions could be a way for future expansion. So there will be different things picked up by business.
I think that's a very good point. You have perspective added, Jyotsna, and I think I must add our experience of last 2 weeks. And we have been faced with a lot of subdued sentiments across industry segments. But I think the way we have encountered, inquiries from overseas corporations, some of the large listed corporations across the Western countries, and the way they have actively kind of connected to firms like us in lookout for investing in various industries. I mean, if I have to say without naming, of course, there have been active interest of investment in industries like seed or ceramics or even packaging industries as conventional as maybe corrugated boxes or flexible molds or boxes. So that I think gives a lot of excitement. And I must add, as kind of compliment to all of the views that it may take time, it may have different shapes for the different states, but as rightly stated, the two statements which particularly struck my attention part of this panel is that we need to be definitely have V-curve for ourselves when it comes to individual business, and alongside I think goodwill and trust. So I think these are very, very insightful messages, and if we keep ourselves right on the fundamentals, keep accruing goodwill and trust, and take our business on kind of V-shaped preparation, I'm sure there'll be a lot of opportunities. So thank you very much. And that I think takes me to the next question. And
Mahavir, I think why don't we have this be your last question, and then we're going to actually switch to the audience Q&A. We've got a number of questions cleared up.
We can take a couple of audience questions, Eric, if there are a lot of questions, and we will connect back with the further questions. We can take audience meanwhile. Sure
thing. So first question we have from the audience, and this is for anyone on the panel. So we've been speaking a lot about how we're reconciling this crisis now, thinking about innovation and cost cutting. But while we know there's eventually going to be an upsurge in the market, what should MSMEs do right now to start putting in proper planning measures so that when the lockdown and the coronavirus tend to subside, they'll be ready to go?
Can I give one advice to small businesses? And this is much more out of my experience. At this point in time, big corporations will try to outsource as much as possible to variabilize their costs. And that means it requires investments, and that will be an opportunity seen by small and medium scale industries to invest to be able to supply to the big corporations. They have to be a little wise and careful in how they plan to invest this. It's good that they make partnership with the big corporations while investing and not take the entire load from either borrowings or funding by themselves, because the risks would lie within that. So this is one of the advice which I would tell small and medium corporations, be careful when you invest in CapExes to support the big corporations which are going to variabilize their costs.
I also will advise that this is a time that they can re-examine where they can bring further innovations and optimize their product, because every time we have been doing it is a good opportunity to re-engineer product to see whether we can really bring down the cost. Because today you have got time, you have got kind of a networked way of working, and you can do a lot of design optimization, design to cost, to see where we can further bring down the cost. I would advise this cooling of time for SMEs to be very innovative and see whether they can do a revisit to their product and bring down the cost of that even small component that they're making. That'll be great.
Sure. So Eric,
Just to add on to that, Mr. Sunde, it will be good.
We can, because there are a lot of questions flowing in. Sorry, Jyotsna. So for any question, we can have one panel members addressing, because I think there are hundreds of queries. So Eric, we'll take one more question before we move on further.
Sure. So second question from the audience. There's been a lot of talk about ways we can identify inefficiencies and try to cut costs going forward. But at the same time, we're looking at the systemic impact of this crisis and thinking about social responsibility. So the question is, how should a company think about managing social responsibility, be it to employees, customers, investors, with at the same time the need for productivity and growth?
Well, if I may just add here, what we've been also analyzing at our side is the last thing you want to look at in a situation like this, which is a complete, global event, is to do your level best to ensure that you do not create any unemployment. Hold on to your team, hold on to your people within the company to the best of your capability. Stretch yourself from that standpoint. Pay what is possibly you're capable of doing so. It's not an opportunity to reduce cost. It's a requisite to reduce cost, but at the same time, keep through increased conversation, increase coordination between officers, sharing between people in the company, so that, that's the best you can do from a social perspective, because you can hold on to your people at a time like this. It'll bode well for you in the future.
I think, Mr. Timlo, you have actually touched hearts with that answer, and I'm sure there's a very, very wise answer. And as entrepreneurs, all of us give our attention, our response to this situation, and be more responsive and accountable. And shortcuts are, it's very easy to cut costs, perhaps very easy to take short-term measures, but the way you have very aptly described, I'm sure this is a very, very responsible, answer to the question. And I'm sure this will be found quite useful and go a long way in maintaining the ecosystem. So, well, I think let's take this discussion forward. And economic impact of COVID-19 on value chain could be huge. There's no doubt about that. And companies will have to address short-term challenges, as we have been discussing. At the same time, the panel members have also opined that there will be a need to develop new strategies for long-term sustainability and growth. And therefore, the next question, as a business participant, as a learner, I would put myself is, how do I balance between the two? Should corporations focus on short-term bounce back or long-term sustainability of business? And for that matter, also adopt diversification or tough measures. So the question before the panel is, should corporations focus on short-term bounce back or long-term sustainability of business?
According to me, that it should be focused on both short-term as well as long-term. For short-term, unwanted products which are not selling should be stopped temporarily in order to reduce the cost. And long-term planning should include improving business model. Means like in a writer of a millennial mindset, it says that whenever, suppose for example, 100 rupees comes to you, it should be divided into TWCGO. Means there is a provision for tax, whatever tax you are compulsorily required to pay. Then invest in wealth. See charity. See, charity is equally important. Now we have seen that 1500 crores rupees have been donated by Tata. After this COVID period is over, then people will, even the better products are available or equally good products are available, then they will be buying only Tata products, because whenever there is a calamity or a problem to the country, Tata stands. Then TWCGO, G for general and O for operational cost. If all these things are taken care and there is a proper apportionment for the contingent funds, in case of fund, if you have time, can I tell you our story in a 1 or 2 minutes, Mahavirji?
Sure, sure. Please, sir.
Mahavirji, sorry, Mahavirji, we have to kind of move.
Actually,
Sorry,
we were doing heavy ad campaign on television, and there was a tremendous demand of our products on after the start of Ye Jo Hai Zindagi serial. Our Dombivli factory production, which was a unit, was to produce this 150,000 acre square feet. This constructed area is there, but the demand was so much increase that we could not fulfill the demand. Therefore, we started factory at Nagpur. But unfortunately, we incurred 20 crores rupees to invest the plant. But within 1 year, there was a strike and lockdown and assault on managerial staff. In case of such contingencies, if we have an apportionment of funds, we'll be able to pay overheads, and accordingly, our business model should be developed. Thank you.
Sure, sure.
I will be very brief, Mahavir. This is a conundrum all of us are going to face.
Sure.
Hobson's choice, like between a CTO, I'm CTO and CFO. For last 1 week, there is a huge discussion on this, whether we should now stabilize our operations, ensure that for 3 months we are able to pay the salary. So Dr. Sonde, your developmental projects can be weighed. And this is not a very simple answer at this point in time. I can be very philosophical, saying that no, the development should happen, the growth should happen, the thing will be done. So it cannot be kind of put it into any framework. But if you ask me, Mahavir, just one sentence and I will kind of do that, because for me, my feeling is that, of course, protecting the current business and seeing that we are able to ensure that for next 3 months, we are able to pay the salary without any kind of thing. We may take a cut, but we are not going to live like that. Compassion, what Amber brought very clearly, is very important at this stage. Developments are important, but we have to look at this development in a new framework, like we are now developing a ventilator. No, in last 10 days, the amount of ventilator Thermax has worked with 8 companies, which is going to be important not only for India, but to the global, and the amount of collaboration which is happening. So we can change the developmental path to meet the new requirements, while we have a big thing on the hydrogen and fuel cell. We're keeping it a little aside. So there's a very dynamic strategy which is coming up. Sorry for a bit.
Thank you, Dr. Sonde. I think very well received, very nicely described. Harshal, quickly, short-term
survive, survive, long-term thrive. Okay, but if you do short-term thrive, then you won't survive in the long term. So that's it.
Okay, deep meanings, we'll analyze it further. Meanwhile, Mr. Timlo, you would like to add something?
No, I think we're effectively all of us seem to be on the same page. I mean, altruistic discipline at best, but at the same time, getting ready for what's going to be a very choppy storm coming forward once the dust settles on the pandemic. But as much to collate everyone together and find new meaning, new purpose, and new opportunity is requisite now.
Sure. Mukund, you are...
No, really, sorry, nothing to add, really. I think everybody said it. It's short-term strive, long-term thrive, whether it's short-term cash flow, long-term innovation and adaptability, all these are, it's all been said before.
Okay.
Just
So
let me sum it up in a small. Let me sum it up in a small way. Since I'm a realist, I look at it as a time speed distance journey, and you will have to have your focus on your near so that you don't get into the ditches, yet have your sight further away because you have to cross the distance in a particular time frame. So as you take care of the human healings, the navigators around you, a teamwork, which is going to be, because at this point in time, everybody will have different thoughts. So being aligned as a team in organizations in the nation is important. Also to keep the focus short term as well as long term, and more of a human factor, like, taking care of the healing time, which is going to take on human minds, will have to be the focus for organizations as well as the states and nations.
Sure.
Mahavir, we are just at the end of the panel here. If you want to just wrap this up with some final comments, we're then going to move into the next phase of the program.
Sure. So I think questions are very many, and I'm sure we will take this discussion forward offline as well and see how we can connect to globally the organizations. Before we conclude this panel discussion, and of course there is going to be pitching session, and I will request all panelists to please continue even after this panel and add value. It will not take much time, but before that, I would like to ask one question to all the panel members, and please share your views briefly, but I think in golden words, what one major change you brought in your organization during this crisis time? Or flipping this question a little differently, what one major change you would like all the businessmen in their organization or businesswomen in their organization during this crisis time to take? What advice you will give, that one advice, final advice to participants at large?
See, one final advice according to me, that avoid luxuries and cater to the necessities. I would like to tell you a simple example.
So
we'll
stick to that, Mr. Pendarkar. I think you have said it very nicely. Avoid luxuries and stick to the necessities. I think next to
and expenses on the recruitment, training, and advertising should be reduced.
Sure. Jyotsna, you would like to quickly add your views on this?
I would certainly say all the finance functions should work from home only. That would be the change that I would like to see for future. We don't have to go to offices. And yeah, I think work from home will be the new norm. So we should have satellite offices or offices at home. So.
But why do you think that only finance functions? What about other functions?
I'm right now talking on behalf of the finance.
On lighter note, so
Mukund, I'm sure many of us can work from home.
Sure. Mukund?
Yeah, so my message to the entire team has been, be calm, be safe, be agile.
Sure.
That's it.
Sure. Mr. Timlo?
So the major change, what I've seen positively, has been more conversations, sharing of ideas, understandings about the requirements of all our stakeholders, employees, clients, etc. And if I have to give one advice to any corporate, if they would listen to go forward to prioritize, would be, a quote of, I think it was Reagan at some time, is trust, yet verify.
Sure. Dr. Sonde?
I'm finding that I'm working much more than what I used to work earlier. The new way of working is becoming so good. Maybe my wife is actually complaining now because it goes on till 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock. And I don't think this is a new way, making me feel very light and seeing a lot of positivity, bringing a spirituality. And I'm really thumbs up to this particular thing. It has brought a change in me and my colleagues.
Sure. I'm sure we all are witnessing that change. Harshal?
Yeah, rather than corporate or whatever, if I could turn the clock back 10 years, right, and what the world could have done, I just wish we had invested a lot more in research, rather than in defense. All the countries, US, India, we spend millions of bucks in, defense and not research. It's a shame. We are as human beings the most evolved, but we have this mini virus, making ourselves hide in our cages at home, right? So it's a shame. I would, for the next 10 years, encourage everybody to put a lot more in research and, make the world truly a better place. We say it all the time, but nobody does it.
So I think very well said. By and large, cost generating units will have to be reshuffled to revenue generating units, at least indirectly, if not directly. And this would entail a lot of training, a lot of R&D, teaming structures getting changed, functional role getting changed. And I think if one word we have to kind of attune as a necessary tool is technology. And that's where I think each and every business, howsoever conventional product segment it could be in, would need to find appropriate innovation and technological tools to sustain and grow. And that, I think, is the preface for our next phase of this discussion, where we bring to you the choicest of technological solutions which could be relevant to the business of one and all.
Well, thank you very much. I'd like to thank not only our moderator, but our very distinguished panel. That was a really insightful discussion. I've got just 5 points, takeaways that I took from it that I'll offer to the crowd for what it's worth. In terms of consistencies that we heard from the panel from all the conversations. Number 1, there's an advice, be bullish, but plan for the worst. We've heard a lot of comments about let's expect the market's going to expand, but actually check our cash flows so that we can sustain. Number 2, there's this focus on adding value to the marketplace while still managing your cash flows in the short term. And it's important to think about that so that when we come out the other side, we'll be able to add value immediately and then regain profits. Number 3, strong comments here about digital, the digital economy with social distancing, what a lot of people are getting used to in ways where adopting digital technologies is necessary for the survival given changes in consumer behaviors and expectations. Number 4, a lot of comments around relationships, using this as an opportunity to think about employees, customers, investors, really bringing back and building trust and understanding through an agile yet careful way how we can manage relationships to then come out stronger. And then finally, the last piece of guidance I've heard is be calm. We're all in this together. We're all in the same situation, looking for the brighter end of the tunnel. Let's be calm and have a long-term view, and together we'll all make it through this. So with that, once again, thank you to our distinguished